Ireland, 1649. A land already scarred by centuries of conflict. For centuries, Ireland had been a battleground for competing powers. English kings, Irish chieftains, and foreign invaders all fought for control. But now, a new force was arriving. As summer faded into autumn, ships appeared on the horizon. On board was a man whose name would become synonymous with conquest and tragedy. That man was Oliver Cromwell. His arrival would mark the beginning of a campaign that would forever change Irish history. Cromwell came not just as a military leader but as a man driven by religious zeal. He believed he was carrying out God's will. For the Irish, his campaign would bring devastation and death. It would leave a legacy of bitterness that endures to this day. To understand what brought Cromwell to Ireland, we must first understand the chaos engulfing the British Isles. England had been torn apart by a brutal civil war. The war pitted the forces of King Charles I against those of Parliament. The war ended with the King's execution in 1649. This event shocked Europe and left England without a monarch. In the aftermath, Oliver Cromwell emerged as one of the most powerful figures in the new English Republic. But while England was rebuilding, Ireland was still reeling from its own rebellion. The Irish Rebellion of 1641 had begun as an attempt to regain control of lands taken by English settlers. However, it quickly spiraled into violence, with reports of massacres on both sides. For the English, the rebellion became a symbol of Catholic treachery. For Cromwell, it was a justification for his campaign. He saw Ireland as a land of chaos and a threat to England's security. Cromwell believed that Ireland needed to be brought under control, by any means necessary. In August 1649, Cromwell landed in Dublin with 12,000 well-trained soldiers. This was the most professional army Ireland had ever seen. Cromwell's mission was clear: to crush Irish resistance and secure English control. But it was his methods that would leave an indelible mark on Irish memory. Cromwell's army was disciplined, well-equipped, and motivated by a sense of religious purpose. For the Irish, this was not just a military invasion, it was a holy war. Cromwell believed he was carrying out God's will. As they marched through Ireland, Cromwell's soldiers left a trail of destruction in their wake. September 11, 1649. The fortified town of Drogheda stood before Cromwell's army. Drogheda was a key strategic location, controlling access to the north of Ireland. Cromwell's forces laid siege to the town, bombarding its walls with heavy artillery. The defenders, a mix of Irish and Royalist forces, fought bravely to hold the town. But after several days of relentless bombardment, the walls were breached. What followed would shock even hardened veterans of the English Civil War. Cromwell ordered no quarter, no mercy for the defenders or the civilians inside. Contemporary accounts describe the streets running red with blood. Cromwell later justified the massacre, claiming it was God's judgment on the Irish. In his own words, Cromwell wrote,
"I am persuaded that this is a righteous judgment of God upon these barbarous wretches."
The massacre at Drogheda sent shockwaves across Ireland. It was a warning to other towns. Resistance would be met with total destruction. Cromwell turned his attention to the east coast of Ireland and the small town of Wexford. Wexford was a key port town, vital for controlling trade and supplies. Cromwell's forces arrived in October 1649 with clear intentions to conduct another ruthless campaign against the Catholic community. The defenders of Wexford hoped to negotiate a surrender, but talks broke down. Before an agreement could be reached, Cromwell's soldiers stormed the town. What followed was another massacre, as soldiers killed defenders and civilians alike. The harbour was destroyed, and many ships were burned or captured. Cromwell later claimed that the attack was not planned, but the damage was done. In his own words, Cromwell wrote,
"It hath pleased God to bless our endeavors at Wexford."
The massacre at Wexford further cemented Cromwell's reputation for brutality. For the Irish, Wexford became another symbol of the horrors of Cromwell's campaign. The sack of Wexford in October 1649 became a symbol of the horrors of Oliver Cromwell's campaign in Ireland. The prosperous port town was a key Confederate stronghold, but its defences crumbled when Cromwell's forces breached them. What followed was a massacre of both soldiers and civilians, with thousands killed indiscriminately, including priests in churches. Homes, churches, and ships in the harbour were burned, reducing the town to ruins. For Irish civilians, Wexford's destruction was a profound tragedy. Families mourned loved ones lost in the slaughter, and survivors were left homeless and destitute. Beyond personal grief, the fall of Wexford became a national trauma, emblematic of the suffering inflicted by Cromwell's campaign. The town's loss resonated deeply as news of the massacre spread, fueling outrage and despair across Ireland. Mourning for Wexford was both a private and collective act. Survivors likely engaged in traditional keening ceremonies, lamenting their losses through haunting chants and wails. The destruction of Wexford was not merely a military defeat, but the obliteration of a vibrant community, leaving a scar on Irish identity. The town's devastation became a rallying cry, cementing its place in the collective memory of Irish suffering. The massacre at Wexford in 1649 stands as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of war and unchecked power. The loss of thousands of innocent lives, civilians and soldiers alike, and the obliteration of a thriving community epitomized the human cost of Cromwell's campaign in Ireland. Wexford's destruction was not merely a military action. It was an act of terror that left deep scars on the Irish psyche. Its memory serves as a testament to the resilience of those who endured, and as a cautionary tale about the atrocities that can arise when compassion is absent in conflict. To forget Wexford is to risk ignoring the lessons of history. It highlights the importance of protecting non-combatants during war, and the devastating toll that violence takes on cultural and social fabrics. The massacre must be remembered not only to honor the victims, but to recognize how their suffering shaped Ireland's identity and resistance to oppression. Wexford's tragedy also carries a universal message. By preserving its memory, we ensure that the horrors of the past remain a guidepost for future generations, urging humanity to strive for justice, dignity, and peace in times of conflict. Let Wexford be a rallying cry against the repetition of such horrors. Cromwell's campaign was not just a military conquest, it was also a religious war. As a devout Puritan, Cromwell viewed Catholicism as a threat to Protestant England. He believed that his actions in Ireland were part of a divine mission. Catholic priests were hunted down, and churches were destroyed or repurposed. For the Irish, this was not just a war, it was an attack on their faith and identity. Oliver Cromwell's campaign in Ireland, waged between 1649 and 1653, stands as one of the most harrowing episodes in Irish history. Sent by the English Parliament to quell resistance from Irish Confederates and Royalists, Cromwell's arrival marked the beginning of a brutal military and political assault. His forces, equipped with superior weaponry and guided by an unrelenting zeal, aimed not only to secure control but to crush any opposition to parliamentarian rule. The sieges of Drogheda and Wexford are infamous for their extreme violence. At Drogheda, after the town's defenders refused to surrender, Cromwell's troops stormed the walls and massacred thousands, including soldiers and civilians. The carnage was intended to serve as a deterrent to other towns, a grim demonstration of the consequences of defiance. Wexford met a similar fate, with soldiers and townspeople slaughtered as the town fell during what were ostensibly surrender negotiations. The devastation left behind was not limited to the battlefields. Cromwell's campaign extended beyond military engagements to a systematic effort to subjugate the Irish population. Scorched-earth tactics ravaged the countryside, leading to widespread starvation and displacement. These actions disproportionately affected Catholics, reinforcing the sectarian underpinnings of the campaign. Land confiscations followed, transferring vast swathes of Irish-owned property to English settlers and soldiers. The long-term impact of Cromwell's campaign was profound. Ireland's population declined sharply due to death, famine, and forced migration, and the social fabric of the nation was irreparably altered. The trauma and resentment stemming from Cromwell's actions persisted, shaping Irish memory and identity for generations. To this day, his name evokes deep animosity in Ireland, symbolizing a period of unparalleled suffering and loss.